members of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, dear colleagues, dear members of the Secretariat, it's a pleasure to welcome you here today for the winter meeting. Please take your seats and we will start in a few seconds. Dear delegates, it's time to start. We have an agenda which will take some time. First of all, once again, dear delegates, dear colleagues, dear members of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, dear members of the Secretariats, you are warmly welcome to the OSCE PA winter meeting, regardless if you are on the web or here in person. You are all aware about the very tragic military aggression that's shown against one OSCE member country from another country. Ukraine is attacked under military aggression from tonight, not only in a part, all the country. It's a broke against the OSCE commitments. It's a broke of international law. And we as parliamentarians, we have a very important role to play. We are legislators back home, but we are also elected by the people and are able to speak with our voters, with our constituencies. And we are able to put pressure on our government to negotiate, to work for peace in the different assemblies where our government take part. And we can also act here in OSCE at our winter meeting. And this morning, we started with the standing committee. And I can tell you that from all the delegates, all except 2, Belarus and Russia, expressed the support for Ukraine and expressed that there is a need for action and activity and condemned the military aggression that's shown. And I'm very pleased that we have the head of the Ukrainian delegation together with us here today. Thank you for coming, Nikita. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I send my best regards from all of us to the Ukrainian people. But I would also like to start and say a few words before we go into the formal agenda, and it's some technicalities. This meeting is being recorded and broadcasted live on the OSCE PA social media platform and website. The list of speakers for our debate has been closed. I will ask all speakers to limit their intervention to 2 minutes during the open debate, thereby enabling a balanced exchange of ideas and a timely conclusion of our meeting. Due to the emergency situation in the Hofburg, interpretation will have to stop at 3 o'clock. I kindly ask all participants to mute the microphone when not speaking. And please speak clearly and slowly to facilitate the work of our interpreters, and kindly share in advance your remarks in written form if available. And we have to end sharply 3 o'clock. So 3:30. And this is because there will be no more interpretation, but also because of the Permanent Council start its meeting at 4 o'clock. And it's important to be there. I will represent our assembly at the meeting. And as it's an emergency situation, there are some changes on the agenda, and there might be even more changes. Our Secretary General is very active on this and keep us updated and hold control on everything. So once again, dear colleagues, given the tragic events unfolding in Ukraine, I'm sure you are all eager to debate and participate today. We have with us the President of the Austrian National Council, Mr. Wolfgang Sobotka. And due to the emergency situation, the OSCE Chairperson-in-Office, the Foreign Minister of Poland, Mr. Zbigniew, will address the Assembly through a recorded video. And to not waste any time, I will go straight ahead to point number 1. The address by the President of the Austrian National Council, Mr. Wolfgang Sobotka. And it's my honor to invite Mr. President Sobotka to deliver his statement. Welcome.
Vielen Dank, sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin Cederfelt, verehrter Herr Außenminister Rau, der derzeit den Vorsitz führt. Liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen, eigentlich müsste ich mich freuen, Sie wieder in Wien begrüßen zu dürfen. Ich freue mich, dass Sie gekommen sind, aber es ist eine traurige Freude angesichts der Tatsache, was in diesen letzten Tagen und dann ganz dramatisch heute seit den frühen Morgenstunden sich in der Ukraine ereignet. Die Parlamentariertreffen der OECD haben eine lange Tradition. Es ist das 21. Treffen. Und dieses 21. Treffen hat gerade aufgrund der aktuellen Umstände, wie Sie auch schon ausgeführt haben, Frau Präsidentin, eine besondere Bedeutung. Die meisten von Ihnen haben, so wie ich, nachgedacht, welche Themen Sie auf die Agenda nehmen in Ihren Reden, was uns bewegt, was es zu adressieren gilt. Die Bekämpfung des Terrorismus, die Situation in Afghanistan oder die Rolle der OSZE in der Sicherheitsarchitektur in Europa. Angesichts der Ereignisse vom heutigen Morgen, und ich bin um 5 Uhr geweckt worden von unserem Nationalen Sicherheitsdienst und informiert worden, dass die Kampfhandlungen begonnen haben. Angesichts dieser Tatsache muss der Fokus auf dieses Thema ganz stark gerichtet werden. Ich gehe gerade von einer laufenden Diskussion im österreichischen Parlament, die derzeit noch läuft, wo die Bundesregierung eine Erklärung abgegeben hat, der Bundeskanzler und der Vizekanzler, und die Parlamentarier das daraufhin diskutiert haben, weg, um hier eindeutig festzuhalten: Österreich als neutraler Staat, als ein Staat, der unter den Kriegsfolgen des Zweiten Weltkrieges enorm gelitten hat. Österreich, das heute ein wesentlicher Partner in der Bewegung von OSZE geworden ist, der verurteilt diese Angriffe auf die territoriale Integrität der Ukraine auf das Schärfste. Die Herrschaft des Rechts ist unsere Leitschnur und sie kann nie dem Recht des Stärkeren weichen. Ein Verdrehen der Geschichte, wie das in diesen letzten Wochen und Monaten durch den Präsidenten der Russischen Föderation passiert ist, ist inakzeptabel. Aber schon seit 2007 haben sich die Anzeichen gezeigt, in welche Richtung hier die Politik Russlands sich ausrichtet. Für uns ist es klar, dass aus dieser Geschichtsverdrehung niemals die Staatlichkeit der Ukraine in irgendeiner Form zur Disposition stehen kann. Und es erschreckt uns, wie Russland mit großer Gleichgültigkeit die grundlegendsten Prinzipien der von Russland, ja selbst von der Sowjetunion, noch selbst unterzeichneten Schlussakte der KSZE-Konferenz, wie sie diese Schlussakte bricht, wo es um die Anerkennung der Grenzen gegangen ist, die Souveränität der Staaten, den Verzicht auf Gewaltanwendung gegenüber diesen Staaten. Das wird heute in all diesen Formen gebrochen. Unverständlich. Und wenn man sich die Fotos ansieht, die aus dem Kreml übermittelt worden sind, wie sein Beraterstab von ihm so quasi wie in einer Matura gemaßregelt wurde, dann zeichnet das ein erschreckendes Bild. Die Situation in der Ukraine war auch bei uns in den vergangenen Wochen und Monaten immer wieder ein Thema. Und wir hatten die Hoffnung, dass diplomatische Beziehungen doch noch eine Wendung zum Besseren, zum friedlichen Verständnis, zum Fortsetzen des Minsker Prozesses gefunden hätten. Heute am Vormittag hat Bundeskanzler Nehammer und der Vizekanzler Kogler, wie auch die Vertreter aller Oppositionsparteien, den Angriff Russlands in der Ganze ganz deutlich als ein schweres Verbrechen auch gebrandmarkt. Und was uns alle erschüttert hat, war das Telefonat heute am Vormittag um 11 Uhr, das der Bundeskanzler mit Präsident Zelensky geführt hat, wo er zum Ausdruck gebracht hat, er weiß nicht, wie lange er noch leben wird oder wie lange noch ein souveräner Staat Ukraine besteht. Das hat alle Parlamentarier bei uns sehr betroffen gemacht. Aber trotzdem, wenn jetzt auch die Waffen sprechen und aktuell sind viele Kämpfe im Gange, die Truppen stehen auch an der Grenze zur Hauptstadt, die russischen Truppen, dürfen wir die Hoffnung nicht aufgeben, alle verfügbaren diplomatischen Kanäle, einschließlich der Kontakte unserer Abgeordneten. Jeder von uns kennt auch Abgeordnete der Duma. Jeder von uns kennt auch Abgeordnete des Senats. Diese Kontakte nicht abreißen zu lassen und auch Abgeordnete der Ukraine, ihnen Mut zuzusprechen. Wir haben gestern ein Treffen der ukrainisch-österreichischen Freundschaftsgruppe abgehalten. Und es ist unser aller Wille, auch gerade auf der Abgeordnetenseite, uns wechselseitig auch zu unterstützen. Krieg, Gewalt kann nie ein Mittel sein, Demokratien zu bekämpfen. Die Idee der Freiheit, die Idee der Demokratie ist auf lange Frist immer stärker. Und das sollte jeder wissen, der sie mit Füßen tritt. Ich kenne keine Diktatur, ich kenne keine gewaltsame Anwendung, die auf immer ihr Ergebnis oder ihr Ziel festhalten konnte. Und die OECD als Plattform für Dialog und für den gegenseitigen Austausch, so schwierig es auch jetzt sein möge, ist ideal dafür prädestiniert. Die Frau Präsidentin hat es schon zum Ausdruck gebracht, es sind alle Staaten hier einer Meinung, auch die Europäische Union zeichnet große Einigkeit aus und heute werden auch noch Ratsbeschlüsse gefasst werden. Wir sollten diesen Fokus nutzen, um rechtebasierte Positionen Gehör zu verschaffen und nicht der militärischen Stärke das Wort zu reden oder gar sie tolerieren. Daher müssen wir alles unternehmen, dass die Diplomatie nicht endet und auch gerade auf der Ebene der Parlamente und der Parlamentarierinnen und Parlamentarier unsere Möglichkeiten nutzen. Auch wenn das jetzt vielleicht wie eine ferne Hoffnung klingen möge, auch wenn das jetzt nicht realistisch erscheint, ist es notwendig, diese Vision und diese Haltung nicht aus dem Auge zu verlieren. Ist es notwendig, in persönliche Kontakte zu treten. Österreich als Sitzstaat der OSZE steht, wie sicher auch alle anderen Mitgliedstaaten, bereit, alles Nötige zu tun, um in der Plattform für eine diplomatische Lösung zu arbeiten. Ein wichtiges Zeichen wäre daher für alle Akteure, dass die OSZE-Beobachter in der Ukraine nicht bedroht werden, dass sie wieder zurückkehren, dass sie dort nicht für politische Zwecke missbraucht werden. Abschließend gehört, glaube ich, jetzt gerade unsere Gedanken der ukrainischen Bevölkerung, den Alten, den Kindern, die auch als zivile Ziele und Opfer in besonderer Art und Weise unter kriegerischen Ereignissen leiden. Krieg spürt die Zivilbevölkerung immer am deutlichsten und am schärfsten. Und ihnen gilt unsere Unterstützung, aber auch unser Beistand. Ich danke Schweden für die erfolgreiche Vorsitzführung im abgelaufenen Jahr, in auch schon herausfordernden Zeiten der Pandemie. Und scheinbar wird die Pandemie von der nächsten Krise abgelöst. Und ich wünsche Polen viel Erfolg für das Jahr 2022 im Vorsitz. Wir können nur zusichern, und das zeigt auch die Anwesenheit unserer Parlamentarier, dass wir weiter intensiv an der Parlamentarischen Versammlung nicht nur Interesse haben, sondern auch einbringen. Und ich hoffe, dass wir Sie in anderen Umständen im Jahre 2023 in Wien wieder begrüßen können, mit Hoffnung und mit Zuversicht in eine bessere Zukunft zu gehen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I think your words is really encouraging in this very, very difficult time. And thank you not only for coming here, because I know that you have a very busy schedule, but for sharing your thoughts and views for the future and your thoughts on Ukraine, and also mention what you see that we can do as parliamentarians. Thank you so much for this. And thank you for your cooperation with OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. And next on the agenda will be moved further down. It would be the address by the Chairperson-in-Office, the Polish Foreign Minister, Mr. Zbigniew, but it will be later because of the difficult circumstances. His schedule is a bit delayed. So instead, I will deliver my address to the winter meeting. Mr. President, dear colleagues, we gather here today as a major conflict threatens the future of Europe. The destructive decisions taken by Moscow and Mr. Putin since the start of this week have buried years of careful diplomacy to find a peaceful solution to the conflict in Ukraine. My thoughts are with the people of Ukraine in these tragic hours. As the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly has insisted since the onset of the crisis 8 years ago, following the illegal annexation of Crimea, the development in Donetsk, Luhansk. This conflict needs to be resolved in full respect for the Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, in line with the principles of the Helsinki Final Act. Our assembly will stand firm on this. The Russian military invasion of Ukraine is an armed aggression in a clear and gross violation and the most basic norms of international law and the OSCE principles and commitments. An overwhelming majority of the OSCE participating states recognize this reality. Our Bureau has condemned these actions this morning, and we stand firm on Ukraine's side. I am sad that despite intense high-level efforts to de-escalate tensions and address security concerns, dialogue has not managed to preserve peace so far. For years now, we have decried deep level of mistrust among OSCE participating states. This has actively worn out security in Europe and led to this dark day. Without trust, there is no transparency. And without transparency, there is no predictability. Without trust, the implementation of our commitments will always fall short. And without trust, we will remain unable to fully exploit in good faith all the OSCE mechanisms that can prevent and diffuse tensions. This includes the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, which for the past 8 years has provided reliable information from the ground to the international community. Our support today goes especially to the staff of the OSCE field operations in Ukraine. You have just as well as I read the daily reports of them, the weekly report, and noticed how their space have been more and more tightened. Less and less room for observations, more restrictions. And here we are today with a full-scale war. Diplomacy is the only tool that can build sustainable peace. I deeply appreciate the emphasis that the Polish chairpersonship have placed from the start of the chairpersonship on using the full potential of the OSCE as a platform for dialogue. And I welcome the renewed OSCE European Security Dialogue as an initiative that can help rebuild trust and mutual understanding. In the present context, all participating states should engage openly in these discussions, and we parliamentarians should encourage our government to do so. Clearly, in today's environment, this is a challenge, but we need to cooperate. We must keep open all lines of communication. We have to continue to bridge differences and together build the trust essential to achieving comprehensive security rooted in the Helsinki principles in the OSCE region. And we can never accept military aggressivity, lack of respect for other countries' integrity. Dear colleagues, our Parliamentary Assembly is diverse. 323 members representing the 57 OSCE participating states, joined by our colleagues from Mediterranean and Asian partners for cooperation. We have different languages, we have different cultures, we are from different generations, and within our own delegations, we come from different political backgrounds. But we have two things in common. We are all parliamentarians, and we are all committed to the OSCE principles. Every one of us is guided by one mission. At our core, we want what we believe is best for our citizens. And this is not always without contradictions. And this is why the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly must remain this unique forum, where we can respectfully confront these differences and seek to find a common ground. While we must continue to debate vigorously, while we must continue to oversee the implementation by governments, including especially our own and our OSCE commitments, while we must continue to denounce violations of the Helsinki principles, and we have also ensured that we fully accomplish our core mission. The Charter of Paris recognized the important role that parliamentarians can play in the work of OSCE, in ending confrontation and division, and in promoting relations founded on respect and cooperation. Our rules of procedures clearly give us responsibility to promote conflict mediation. They call on us to support the key objective in the OSCE, chief of which is to promote better relations between our participating states. But this means as well that all states need to participate and be engaged. It's always needed to dance a tango. Unfortunately, I must deplore that the national parliaments are being used to endorse radical solutions and to pour more oil on the fire. Today, more than ever, parliamentarians must exercise their oversight role, and we have to enable our governments to breach international commitments. Parliaments have to be the tool for de-escalation, not weapons of confrontations. The COVID-19 pandemic has clearly been a setback for parliamentary diplomacy. It has been also a setback for our societies. Just when we saw the light in the corner, there is this terrible war from one OSCE country against another. And we have to continue and pick up the dialogue again and work for cooperation, but also to find the light in the tunnel. This is extremely important. Dear members, although a majority of you are participating online, we have to must make the most out of this winter meeting to re-establish parliamentary diplomacy as an effective tool for peacemaking. Numerous challenges and conflicts remain unresolved. We will face more on our way towards peace and stability in Europe. Beyond our sharp disagreements, there is much that we can achieve on issues of shared concerns. Our work on migration, countering terrorism, clearly demonstrate this. Many other areas, in particular climate change, provide additional opportunities to work together. And I really regret, because the war that are here today take a lot of focus from other issues that's needed to be handled. But when it's a situation like this, we as parliamentarians know also to prioritize what's most important. Today marks the first stage towards the first fully fledged annual session since 2019. Our general committees will provide moments to exchange with representatives from the OSCE executive structure. We will have ample time to debate and hear each other. In the months to come, we have to remain mobilized to defend our shared values, to make the OSCE work, and to effectively tackle all the challenges affecting our participating states. And I thank you for your strong commitment to the OSCE, to democracy, to rule of law, and to your parliamentary assembly. And I wish all a productive meeting over the next 2 days. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, there will be another change in the agenda. The chairperson-in-office, Polish Foreign Minister, Mr. Zbigniew, is not ready with his video yet because of the emergency duties. So we will go straight ahead to the open debate, and I will make a break in the open debate when we have the Polish Foreign Minister online. So now we will move to the debate held under the theme Security Guarantees and the Indivisibility of Security in Europe, the role of the OSCE. I have 41 members signed up to speak. I will limit the speaking time to 2 minutes, and I thank you in advance for your cooperation. And our first speaker is Mr. Potorayev, head of the Ukrainian delegation. He will be speaking, followed by Ms. Partus, head of the Polish delegation. Mr. Potorayev, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Something, maybe, okay. Thank you.
Is Mr. Potorayev here?
I'm here.
He's speaking. Thank you, sorry.
There was something wrong with the microphone. That's okay. Dear colleagues, a couple of hours ago, Mr. Tolstoy lied to all of us during his speech. He said that Russian troops come to Ukraine with peace. Okay, hard battles now are going on around and already partially inside Kharkiv. It's one of the largest cities in Ukraine. Also around Sumy, regional center of neighbor region. Battles, as far as we know, go on inside Kherson, one of our centers of the south. Russians are killing civilians. Russians use artillery and rocket missiles against cities. And we think that maybe quite soon they will propose negotiations. Again, colleagues, I would like to stress that they, in reality, are not interested in negotiations. They will use negotiations, any diplomacy, to finish occupation of my country. They don't want to stop. They stop only if my country will fall. And as for European security, I can easily tell you what happened next. Next, they will come for Moldova. Then, I think they will try to finish their bloody business with our Georgian friends. Then, they will come to Baltic states. This is what will happen if Ukraine falls tomorrow. But Ukraine will fight till the end. Now I'm talking not only as head of Ukrainian delegation, I'm talking on behalf of whole our parliament, where parliamentarians now get weapon, because all Ukrainian parliamentarians, majority of them, men and women, now are receiving Kalashnikovs and other weapon and are ready to fight on Kyiv streets. on Kiev houses if occupants come to Kiev. Occupants, I believe, are not able to come to Kiev. But if they come to any Ukrainian city, we will not negotiating with them. We will fight. We will kill as many of them as we can till we have last bullet, till we have last grenade. This is how we have to fight for European security, colleagues. And again, I'm not asking, I'm just saying absolutely calmly and frankly, if Ukraine falls, there will be no European security. And you are representatives of your parliaments. Please, colleagues, take decisions. It's not about days, it's about hours. Thank you very much.
Oscar Mina from San Marino. Oscar Mina.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Potorayev, for your speech, and it's very much appreciated from all of us, and send our best regards once again to the Ukrainian people. And we wish an end on this terrible war against Ukraine, our neighbor countries, one of the OSCE country. And now let's go further on the list. Oh, but it was okay. Next speaker is Oscar Mina, head of the San Marino delegation, and he will be followed by Mr. Okamura from Czech Republic. Oscar Mina, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Grazie Presidente. Di fronte a questa situazione che si sta evolvendo in questo conflitto tra Russia e Ucraina, credo sia necessario un ruolo sul nostro processo che stiamo attuando in questo momento di negoziazione, ovvero cercare in qualche modo che l'Organizzazione per la Sicurezza in Europa incida con un vero approccio multilaterale. Dico questo perché la nostra organizzazione si regge su di un processo decisionale generalmente consensuale, ma è evidente che l'ampio numero degli stati partecipanti, ciascuno con priorità geopolitiche diverse, talora anche confliggenti, non rende agevole il raggiungimento di questo consenso, per ottenere appunto un risultato soddisfacente con un'accentuazione e mediazione politica, diplomatica o parlamentare molto più rilevante. Oggi, se vogliamo, volgiamo lo sguardo ai conflitti in quest'area, ovvero prevale una sensazione di paralisi, in particolare riguardo a questa crisi, che tutti gli stati Osce seguono con una profonda attenzione, e credo sia giusto in questo momento ribadire il concetto di integrità alla sovranità territoriale dell'Ucraina, così come da sempre è stato richiesto anche con l'attuazione degli accordi di Minsk. Per questo il ruolo dell'Osce rimane fondamentale per i processi negoziali. Qui dunque non è in discussione il metodo della ricerca e del consenso, che ha sempre ribadito l'Osce in maniera multilaterale, men che meno ad una sua sconfitta. Quindi crediamo che la cooperazione e la sicurezza per la stabilizzazione di questo conflitto passa proprio attraverso l'assemblea parlamentare di questo consesso. Quindi io concludo dicendo che dobbiamo continuare a lavorare insieme per allontanare il concetto di sfiducia, di rassegnazione, unitamente alla complessità dei processi negoziali al nostro interno, affinché questa nostra attività diplomatica parlamentare sia molto più inclusiva e multilaterale rispetto magari ad altri aspetti. Grazie Presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mina. And now I will give the floor to Mr. Okamura from Czech Republic. He will be followed by Ms. Kusaiku from Russia. Mr. Okamura, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I start, just a note to the interpreters. I will not be using the text of my original intervention. Dear Mrs. President, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the Czech Republic strongly condemns the unacceptable behavior of the Russian Federation, which has nothing to do with modern standards of European politics and takes our continent back many decades. By its undefensible and unsubstantiated aggression against the Ukraine, the Russian Federation violates the OSCE principles and commitments, the basic norms of international law, and peaceful coexistence between the nations, which Russia itself invokes. The return of the Kremlin to the historically surpassed traditions of the imperial, expensive, and ruthless policy of the Soviet Union, with which even the Czechs have their unfortunate experience, is bringing war, chaos, and suffering to Europe, not only to countless innocent Ukrainians, but it cannot bring anything good to the citizens of Russia either. It is all the more sad that the citizens of Russia who have endured so much suffering during World War II will allow their leadership to stir up hatred in Europe against other nations and wage an offensive war against its nearest neighbors. Together with allies in NATO, the EU, and other partners, the Czech Republic is on the side of Ukraine at this difficult time. We will continue to support Ukrainians in their just desire to decide independently on their own destiny and to strive for the democratic future and Euro-Atlantic orientation of their country. We urge the Russian Federation to back away from military aggression, withdraw its troops from Ukraine, and return to the negotiating table. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Okamura. And now I will give the floor to Ms. Koziako from Russia. After that will be the address by Mr. Zbigniew, Chairperson-in-Office of OSCE. Ms. Koziako, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Добрый день, моя фамилия Кусайко, там достаточно хорошо можно прочитать. Мне очень жаль, что предыдущие спикеры не замечали попрания прав России, а навязывали свои права и свои миропорядки. Мы сегодня видим, что нацизм вновь поднял голову. И мы помним, чем это обернулось для планеты, какой ценой была достигнута победа во Второй мировой войне. Целями спецоперации в Украине является мирная жизнь на Донбассе и защита России от военных угроз на ее границах. Россию невозможно закрыть железным занавесом. Проблемы могут быть с рядом стран, но они были и раньше. Хочу подчеркнуть, недопустимо, чтобы на площадке ОБСЕ звучали оскорбления в адрес президента России Владимира Путина, российских парламентариев, российского народа. Россия никогда не была врагом Украины. Наши народы всегда считались братскими. Народные республики Донбасса обратились с просьбой о помощи. 8 лет на их земле война, и вы этого не хотите заметить. Мы не можем быть равнодушными. Наша задача — думать о будущем. Оно у нас общее. Объединить Россию и Украину должна дружба, согласие и память о том, что наши деды и отцы сражались за мирное небо. Россия подтверждает стремление к улучшению отношений и углублению взаимопонимания. Для эффективного реагирования на современные вызовы и угрозы безопасности в союзном мире необходимо объединение общих усилий. 30 лет беспринципного обмана России с Западом завершены. Настало время все назвать своими именами. Мы не имеем права дальше терпеть убийства русскоязычных и инакомыслящих граждан, наращивание военной мощи направлено на наше уничтожение. Наши дети об этом.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam. Now we will go to the video. It's a point of order first. Thank you. Please.
Colleagues, maybe it's for the first time in human history, now we've heard about Jewish Nazists. President Zelensky, Nazist. I'm also halfly Jew. We have a lot of Jews in parliament, in government. So welcome. We are Jewish Nazists in Ukraine. How can we talk about anything with people who lie so cynically? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention and comments. I will not make any comments on the Russian intervention. It stands for itself. Now, I would like to give the floor to the address by the Chairperson-in-Office of the OSCE and Foreign Affairs, Minister of Poland, Mr. Zbigniew. The video is on. Thank you.
Madam President, distinguished members of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today in my capacity as the OSCE Chairman-in-Office. The OSCE was designed to prevent another war on the European continent. Since the very beginning of the Polish chairmanship, my goal has been to seek compromise and facilitate dialogue between parties in conflict, taking into account the humanitarian impact on people living in conflict-affected areas. Unfortunately, today I do not have good news to report. Over the last few days, we have witnessed a grave violation of international law and Helsinki commitments. Today, an unspeakable act of state terrorism has begun to unfold before our eyes. A smaller and weaker country has been attacked once more by a larger and more powerful neighbor. Russia's unprovoked all-out invasion against Ukraine's cities and villages constitutes a fundamental breach of the UN Charter and Helsinki Final Act. Revoking Article 51 of the UN Charter to justify this crime against humanity is deplorable and shameful. We condemn, in the strongest possible words, this act of aggression. We expect the Russian side to honor its international obligations and commitments. Any sustainable political solution must fully respect sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of Ukraine. We should constantly be guided by these simple truths. First, nations have the right to live in peace and dignity. Second, security and stability is key to sustainable economic growth, which is the foundation of prosperity and development. Third, no one and no individual state has a right to use military and coercive power to advance their individual goals. Simple as they seem, they have far-reaching and long-term consequences. For us, parliamentarians, the lawmakers, implementing these rules means introducing just and universal laws. We should serve as the guardians of the rules-based order. This order can work only if it is built on a consensus around the fundamental understanding that no one is above the law. The laws that we are bound by and are obliged to follow. We are slaves of the law so that we may be able to be free. These are the words of the great Roman statesman, lawyer and philosopher, Marcus Tullius Cicero, from more than 2,000 years ago. It is incredibly important today to understand two important aspects: the nature of the legal framework that forms the Great Helsinki Decalogue, and how this legacy can help to regulate the current and future challenges to security and stability in the OSCE area. Today, I would like to repeat another simple truth. Humankind can only flourish in peace, while war brings destruction and despair. We want to work to stop the war and prevent any further ones. We need to return to Helsinki culture, based on mutual cooperation between countries and nations. Following the tragedies and human suffering of the two world wars and bloody conflicts of the 20th century, we are able to calibrate the rules that became the bedrock of the current international legal order. I have one appeal to all of us today. Let us not destroy that legacy. The Helsinki process that helped us to avoid a major military confrontation during the Cold War should guide us through the current difficult situation. Dear colleagues, it is our joint responsibility to defend peace. The OSCE should serve as a platform to discuss all aspects of European security. In the context of the recent tensions, I launched an initiative of a renewed European security dialogue that would help to avoid a major military confrontation. In keeping with our overarching goal to revert to Helsinki culture, we offered the participating states a framework to engage in a meaningful discussion on the basic concepts of the Helsinki Decalogue, including the comprehensive concepts of security, indivisibility of security, and peaceful interstate relations. Unfortunately, the latest action by the Russian side visibly contradicts our initiative that was supported by an overwhelming majority of the participating states. However, I would like to assure everyone that the door to diplomacy is still open, and I call on Russia to engage in a meaningful and substantial dialogue to seek a peaceful solution to the current crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, I still hope that we will be able to unite in good faith around the overarching goal to save peace based on Helsinki principles and commitments. The parliamentary dimension of the OSCE and the Assembly itself is tailored for strengthening multilateralism and promoting conflict prevention through dialogue. And today, this task may have greater and more important meaning than ever. Thank you.
And even if Mr. Sanjeev Rao is not here, I would like to thank Chairperson-in-Office and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland for his remarks to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly winter meeting. Thank you. I wish you all the best and good luck for the important work that has to be done because of the Russian war inside Ukraine. And next speaker on the list is Siv Moslet, head of the Norwegian delegation. She will be followed by head of the OSCE delegation from United States, Mr. Steve Cohen. Ms. Siv Moslet, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President and dear colleagues. Let me thank OSCE for using the tools at hand to try to stop what's happening in Ukraine. The present situation in Europe is very serious. The Norwegian delegation joined many others in strongly condemning Russia's military aggression against Ukraine. This is a violent breach of international law. Norway supports Ukraine's independence and territorial integrity within internationally recognized borders. The Helsinki Final Act and all OSCE commitments that have followed from it are fundamental to our security. Continued international work in this situation is vital for sharing correct information and protect the international law and human rights. We need to speak with one strong international voice against the military aggression of the Russian leadership. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Ms. Siv Moslet. Next speaker on the list is Mr. Steve Cohen, head of the OSCE delegation from United States of America. He will be followed by Mr. Edward Agayanyan, head of the Armenian delegation. Mr. Steve Cohen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
President and delegates here, representatives of your parliaments throughout Europe and other parts. I was going to speak about the indivisibility of security, which was on the agenda. And Russia has a particular interpretation of it, which is hard to follow and hard to make sense of. Syllogisms. But how can you read something or debate something with a group, a country, governmental entities that say that the people in Ukraine are Nazis? It offends me to no end. Like the gentleman from Ukraine, like Mr. Zelensky, I am Jewish. Nazis killed Jews. The horrific Holocaust like none other, killing 6 million Jews, killing others as well. Systematic genocide. That's not what the Ukrainians are for. The Ukrainian leader, Mr. Zelensky, is Jewish. It makes no sense. They lie. That's the only thing consistent from Russia is lying and bullying and aggrievement and trying to regain something they had 75 years ago in the Soviet Union. 75 years ago, the Soviets fought the Nazis. But that's 75 years ago. They're done. They won that war. Don't try to use KGB propaganda in the 21st century. It's over. It's time, as John Lennon said, to give peace a chance. Imagine no countries, no lines, just give peace a chance. I hope we can do that. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steve Cohen. Next speaker on my list is Mr. Edward Agarian, head of the Albanian delegation. He will be followed by Mr. Andreas Aebi, head of the OSCE delegation to Switzerland. Mr. Edward Agarian, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, dear colleagues. Indeed, we're all deeply concerned by the current developments in Ukraine because any war is a tragedy, which implies multiple lost lives, casualties, and other losses. Similarly, the war of aggression unleashed by Azerbaijan on 27 September 2020 in the midst of a global pandemic had its tragic consequences and has seriously undermined the credibility of the OSCE. More than a year after the signing of the trilateral ceasefire statement on 9 November 2020, the prospects for peace in the region are still elusive. Azerbaijan continues its aggressive actions, such as the incursion into the sovereign territory of Armenia. The constant military escalation and ceasefire violations along the state border, the continued illegal detention of Armenian prisoners of war and civilian captives, and the destruction and misappropriation of Armenian cultural heritage, which cannot be regarded as indications of Azerbaijan's readiness to build trust and confidence. Contrary to Azerbaijan, Armenia has proven in several occasions that it is ready to undertake real steps towards a lasting peace in the region. We believe that first and foremost, in order to achieve this goal, the sides should uphold to their obligations derived from the trilateral statements signed by the leaders of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and the Russian Federation. Unfortunately, there is a clear discrepancy between Azerbaijan's declared intention of peaceful coexistence and its real actions. Azerbaijan continuously falsifies or misinterprets several provisions of the trilateral agreement, sometimes even blatantly inventing new ones, which have nothing to do either with the content or with the spirit of those documents. One of such inventions is the so-called Zangezur corridor, which one cannot find in any of the three trilateral statements, and which is a direct act of threat and terror towards sovereignty of Armenia. Dear colleagues, the current situation in Nagorno-Karabakh is the result of a flagrant violation of Azerbaijan of several core principles of Helsinki Final Act, namely refraining from the threat or use of force, as well as the peaceful settlement of disputes. No one should be under any illusion that the results of the use of force, accompanied by war crimes and violations of international humanitarian law, can ever become the basis for a lasting and sustainable peace. Such a peace can be achieved in the region only through a comprehensive settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict under the auspices of the OSCE Minsk Group co-chairmanship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Edward Agarian. And next speaker is Mr. Andreas Aebi, head of the Switzerland delegation. He will be followed by Mr. Igor
Frau Vorsitzende, geschätzte Kolleginnen und Kollegen, um es noch einmal auf den Punkt zu bringen, die Schweiz verurteilt die russische Invasion in der Ukraine aufs Schärfste. Sie fordert Russland auf, diese Aggression sofort zu beenden und seine Truppen aus dem ukrainischen Hoheitsgebiet abzuziehen. Es handelt sich hier um eine massive Verletzung des Völkerrechts. Eine stabile Friedensordnung für alle Staaten muss das gemeinsame, langfristige Ziel sein. Dieses darf nicht militärisch, sondern kann nur diplomatisch erreicht werden. Dies muss im Rahmen eines inklusiven Dialoges thematisiert und einer Lösung zugeführt werden. So ruft die neutrale Schweiz Russland dazu auf, an den Verhandlungstisch zurückzukehren. Unsere europäische Sicherheitsarchitektur ist zentral und sie ist gefährdet. Sie muss erhalten und gestärkt werden. Die aktuelle Krise betrifft nicht nur Russland und die Ukraine, sie betrifft ganz Europa. Die Friedensordnung, die in Europa in den letzten Jahrzehnten aufgebaut wurde, steht jetzt leider an einem Wendepunkt. Seit 2014 ist die Lage in der Ostukraine ein zentrales Anliegen der Schweizer Regierung und des Parlaments. Der Ukraine ist auch ein Land, das ich im vergangenen Jahr im Rahmen meines Mandats als Präsident des Nationalrates auf meiner Präsidialreise besucht habe. Heute denke ich an die Menschen vor Ort, die von diesen Konflikten betroffen sind. Meine Damen und Herren, es kann doch nicht sein, dass heute und jetzt junge Ukrainerinnen und Ukrainer sterben. Man hätte sie so nötig in der Ukraine und in Europa. Es wird viel von Geschichte erzählt. Ich besuchte Holodomor, Hunger durch Tod, als Politiker als Soldat und als Bauer, als praktizierender Bauer. 4 Millionen Bauernfamilien sollen um 1930, 31 gestorben sein. Wegnahme durch Nahrung. Ich habe noch selten sowas erlebt. Das ist mir ganz tief gegangen. Ich kann Ihnen versichern, in dieser dramatischen Lage wird sich die Schweiz weiterhin entschlossen für die Stabilität und den Wohlstand der Ukraine einsetzen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andreas Aebe. Next speaker is Mr. Igor Yanushev from North Macedonia. He will be followed by Mr. Mark Pritchard from United Kingdom. Mr. Igor Yanushev, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Dear President, dear colleagues, Macedonia strongly condemns the military actions that Russia is taking against Ukraine, which will unavoidably lead to the irreparable human loss and material damage. As NATO member state, we join the alliance's call on Russia to end the military actions on Ukraine's territory and on behalf of citizens of Macedonia, express solidarity with the Ukrainian people in these difficult times. We believe that the way out of the current situation from all of the tensions and confrontation should be through active bilateral and multilateral engagement in the light of the Helsinki Final Act and its provision related to the respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the political independence of the states, and in this case for the Ukraine. And our position is clear. We advocate for the de-escalation, peaceful resolution, and active dialogue in resolving outstanding issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Igor Yanushev. And now, next speaker is Mr. Mark Pritchard from United Kingdom. He will be followed by Mr. Michael Link from Germany. Mr. Mark Pritchard, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Ukraine may not be NATO's border. It may not be the EU's border, but it is democracy's border and represents all who aspire to live in freedom and democracy. And today is a dark day for Europe, but especially for the people of Ukraine, young and old alike. Children that yesterday were attending nursery or kindergarten are today in bunkers with air raid sirens going off. Russia's premeditated aggression is a flagrant breach of international law, the Minsk progress, the Normandy talks, and breaches the 1994 Budapest Memorandum on Security Assurances. Today, Russia has torn up the rule book, and it cannot be allowed to succeed. Our quarrel is not with the Russian people, but with President Putin and his antiquated and perverse mindset. This is a time for this assembly to stand together, for Europe, the UK, the United States, and all our allies to stand strong with Ukraine, for the Baltic states, for Poland, for Georgia, and for all freedom-loving peoples. A time for like-minded nations to unite for liberty, freedom, and peace. And the United Kingdom today stands with the people of Ukraine. Putin cannot be allowed to win. We must stand strong, and we do it better together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mark Pritchard. Next speaker is Mr. Michael Link from Germany. He will be followed by head of the Swedish delegation, Mr. Johan Büser. Mr. Michael Link, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. As Vice Chair of our third committee, I will be speaking English. Full support from Germany and especially, of course, also from the leadership of the third committee to Ukraine, to the delegation. I thank very much to everything what has been said by our Ukrainian colleague, and I couldn't underline it more. Dear colleagues, we are meeting in the darkest hour of this organization on this continent in this century. It's the darkest hour of an organization which is meant to be confidence building, diplomacy hiding, and really working for peace. Diplomacy remains relevant. We will try to keep the door open, but other organizations, sister organizations, others like the Council of Europe, like, of course, the European Union and NATO, they will also go to sanctions. And I think it's absolutely necessary also to speak, in addition to diplomacy, also the language of clear cut and sharp deterrence. But diplomacy can only be fruitful. We heard the Russian delegation speak today. It can only be fruitful if the words of the colleagues there are the words of really independently elected and independently minded colleagues, not rubber stamped by Kremlin propaganda. This sort of exchange makes no sense. We want to exchange with elected representatives of the Russian people. The Russian people is not our enemy. Quite to the contrary, I doubt very much that these persons sitting in the Duma today express the free will of the Russian people. So therefore, let's come back to this table. Let's come back to Helsinki. Let's come back to the Paris Charter, and let's come back to peace. That is my appeal from the German delegation to the Russians, to the Russian Duma delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael Link. Next speaker is Mr. Johan Büser, head of the Swedish delegation. He will be followed by Ms. Vilja Alkinate-Abramikian, head of the Lithuanian delegation. Mr. Johan Büser, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, and dear members of the Assembly. I would like to start by quoting the previous speaker from the Ukrainian delegation. If Ukraine falls, there is no such thing as European security. And we are now facing a full ongoing war in Europe on this very day. Hundreds of people are already reported dead after these attacks. The world is now keeping its breath. And not since the Second World War have the OSCE seen greater upheaval than in recent days. We have witnessed incomparable aggression, acts outrageous in these times when many of us are seeing peace and security as a common good. At this moment, we struggle in finding security. Brutal invasions should not be practiced today, but this ambition has largely failed, and this must be a case of serious concern for the global community. Dear members of the Assembly, in recent years, we have seen a declining respect for human rights and the democratic state. In some states, the development has been notably severe. The states who have lapsed furthest into authoritarian practices are now also the gravest aggressors. We have for many years witnessed the dismantling of the civil society in Russia, the rights of man and citizen being swept away. This offensive has now been carried out abroad against the international law and security architecture of Europe. In face of dramatic challenges, we must safeguard the rights of each human and citizen. We, the people of the OSCE region, are united in our aspiration for essential dignity and a decent life. In the face of rising tensions in the OSCE region, the need to safeguard democracy and human rights is greater than ever. Our common security must include each and every one of the OSCE's 1.3 billion citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Sorry, thank you so much. Next speaker is Ms. Vilja Alkinate-Abramikian, head of the Lithuanian delegation. She will be followed by Vice President Pia Kauma from Finland. Ms. Vilja Alkinate-Abramikian, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I had the possibility to speak today about breaching all possible international orders by Russia, and I'm not going to repeat it. I only will inform you about my own country. The Parliament of Lithuania, Seimas, will have extraordinary meeting soon, and they will pass the law about emergency situation. The President of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda, expressed his will to sign this document immediately. Lithuania is not under attack yet, but I want to tell you about the specific situation. The situation has changed dramatically because we speak about Russia here, but Belarus de facto has been annexed by Russia, and Kiev today is experiencing military attack, direct military attack from the Belarus territory. I don't know what our colleagues from so-called Belarusian parliament think about. Mr. Link underlined the necessity for parliamentarians to be elected. We all know the real situation. But providing your territory to aggressions, you join the list of war criminals, my dear colleagues. And you know, Belarusian border is only 40 kilometers from Lithuanian capital. So you have new West Berlin now. Lithuania, surrounded by Belarus, and Kaliningrad Oblast has only 100-kilometer border with Poland. We've been under attack, under threat as well, seeing what's going on in Ukraine. And I want to draw your attention to this. We expect you having in mind that Lithuania, our capital Vilnius, is the West Berlin of 21st century, because Russia and Belarus in this situation have brought us back to the 19th century and even more maybe to the 18th century and to the Middle Ages, when such methods of threatening, of attacking other countries was the rule. I can only ask Russia and Belarus to come back to Helsinki culture, as Mr. Zbigniew Rau said before. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Viljalkina-Tapukene. Next speaker is Vice President Pia Kauma from Finland. She will be followed by Farah Karimi, head of the Netherlands delegation. Vice President Pia Kauma, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Madam President, as members of the OSCE EPA, we have to be, and we have been absolutely clear. We condemn the Russian invasion and unprovoked and unjustified attack, which is a violation of international law. If we look at the course of events from a larger and historic perspective, we have seen in the past how conflicts have been allowed to escalate step by step when firm response has been too weak or come too late. Today, we should learn from our past mistakes. Madam President, I'm also thinking of our civilian missions, and I'm particularly concerned about the situation of the special monitoring mission to Ukraine. The present mandate of the mission will terminate at the end of March. Of course, our concern should be for the security of the members of the mission, but we should also aim at ensuring a continuation of the mission, which provides us with valuable information from the ground. In this instance, I'm also thinking of the Moscow mechanism, which complements and strengthens the Vienna mechanism. This mechanism, unlike other procedures of the OSCE, doesn't require the consensus of all participating countries. 10 countries are enough to establish an independent mission to study the facts of serious violations of OSCE commitments to human rights. And this mechanism can also be initiated by the country that has been the target of an aggression. Such an official OSCE report can be used by international organizations, including financial organizations, to rebuild relations with the country. Madam President, the debate today should send a clear signal to the Russian leadership, but also to find the right practical tools that can be used in this extremely difficult situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pia Kauma. Next speaker on my list is Ms. Farah Karimi, head of the Netherlands delegation. She will be followed by Mr. Gregor Bierkia from Poland. Ms. Farah Karimi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Europe is in war, is the headline of newspapers today. What a dark day for all of us. It is a shame and a tragedy that Mr. Putin chooses for a severe violation of international law and attacks after months of denial Ukraine. This requires decisive condemnation, action, and firm sanctions. Mr. Tolstoy's statement this morning was very disturbing. Russia seeks nothing less than a regime change in Ukraine. This unilateral act of aggression is unacceptable. I call upon to Russian people, stop this madness. Kremlin is not acting in their interest, and express our solidarity with people of Ukraine. Civilians will pay heavy price. Humanitarian aid and the generous European support for refugees is the least we can do. Today's crisis, which is quickly evolving into a bloody war, shows that we should have been stronger in our responses earlier. Of course, we protested when civil society structures were systematically destroyed in Russia, such as the ban on memorial. And we protested when one after another opposition leader, like Mr. Navalny, were poisoned, arrested, put in jail, and mistreated. Obviously, we can fairly say now, those protests were too little and too late. The enormous dependency on Russian gas and oil was obviously one of the reasons for European governments' hesitation for sanctions. It is good that the German government stopped the Nord Stream 2 pipeline yesterday. However, it should have happened earlier. We have to learn our lessons and be firm in all three dimensions of security principles as we know it in OSCE. Thank you, Madam President.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Madam Farah-Karimi. Next speaker is Ms. Grzegorz Bierki from Poland. He will be followed by Mr. Nicholas Samkaradze, head of the Georgian delegation. Mr. Bierki, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, dear colleagues. Polish Minister Rau has clearly presented Polish government's position on this situation in Ukraine, on this war of Ukraine with Russia. Let me use my 2 minutes, which is probably not enough, to express how we in Poland are concerned and angry to see again the imperial fate of Russia we have seen so many times. For last month, we have heard Russia assuring the world that there will be no invasion of Ukraine. OSCE has been engaged to keep dialogue with Russia. It was the Russian choice to break the European and world security architecture, the architecture which gave Europe and the world peace for last few generations. Poland has very long and strong ties with Ukraine. Poland in last decades became a home for about 2 million of Ukrainians. Our hearts are with people of Ukraine. We are ready to host our Ukrainian brothers in Poland to give them the shelter from the Russian oppression. Today, the Polish Parliament unanimously accepted the motion to condemn the Russian aggression. By the war in Ukraine, Russia has excluded themselves from the international community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grzegorz Bierki. Next speaker on my list is Mr. Nicholas Samkaradze, head of the Georgian delegation. He will be followed by Mr. Mati Raidma, head of the delegation from Estonia. Mr. Nicholas Samkaradze, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Georgia enjoys effective partnership through the parliamentary dimension and considers OSCE as an important platform for fostering the political will to implement OSCE principles. Indivisibility of security means that if security of an individual state is threatened, then the security of whole Europe is under big question mark. The Russian aggression against Ukraine threatens the fundamental principles of European security and practically the Helsinki Final Act as the founding act of the OSCE. We are facing an attempt of redrawing borders in Europe by force. It is important that we also focus about developments in Georgia, where the security situation is quite grave too. Moscow has intensified the annexation process of Georgia's occupied territories and continues provocations on a daily basis, seriously destabilizing the situation on the ground. Putting up barbed wire fences in local residents' orchards and vineyards, closure of the crossings at the occupation line, kidnappings and illegal detentions of citizens of Georgia, deprivation of right of the ethnic Georgian children to get primary education in their native language, renaming of Georgian villages, and erasing Georgian cultural trace are just a few examples of what occupation of historic Georgian provinces has caused. I have to agree with my Ukrainian colleague who just said that this ongoing war is not about Donbass or Russian-speaking minorities. It is about destroying independence of Ukraine and consequently of Georgia and probably others. Allowing Russia to violate the principles of international peace and security established in the wake of 2 world wars and the Cold War severely undermines the world order and drags us all back to a much more dangerous time when Europe was divided by Iron Curtain and threatened by destructive all-out wars. A lack of adequate response of the international community to Russia's aggressive actions in the region will create a serious threat to European security. Thus, the role of the OSCE that the OSCE has to play in keeping stability and security in Europe is absolutely critical now. So let's act now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicolas Samkaradze. Next speaker on my list is Mr. Matti Raidma, head of the Estonian delegation. He will be followed by Vice President Zbigniew from Azerbaijan. Mr. Matti Raidma, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Honorable President, dear colleagues. First, I would like to express my deepest condolences to the Ukrainian people, to those who have already lost loved ones. Unfortunately, the situation is getting worse. The geopolitical catastrophe that the war is facing today has direct effects to all of us, for all Europe, for all world. We should not tolerate any kind of act of violence against democracy, and the consequences of any attempt of the invasion of independent Ukraine had to be grave. Today, when Estonia has 104th birthday of becoming an independent country, we understand that freedom and sovereignty did not come easily, and it should never be taken as granted. The independence of Estonia is now protected better than ever before because we have friends and allies. Today, the ultimate task of all of us is to ensure a similar sense of ally for our Ukrainian friends. Hope for dialogue and de-escalation died when Russia started its invasion to Ukraine. If a country does not respect the international law, UN Charter and values what OSCE stands for, peace, democracy, and stability, then how can there be a seat behind the table for such as an aggressor? What we have to do, we should show our full support to Ukraine every day, every minute. Its independence, territorial integrity, right to self-defense, and sovereign right to choose its own path, free from intimidation or the threat of aggression. We all will stay behind Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matti Raidma. Next speaker on my list is Vice President Zbigniew from Azerbaijan. He will be followed by Mr. Denis Karas from Belarus. Mr. Zbigniew, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, to be honest, I prepared a totally different speech, but unfortunately, Armenian delegation didn't miss this opportunity again to attack on my country. I had a feeling that our colleagues from Armenia for the last 2 years coming to the sessions of assembly with ready text, repeating the same and the same lies, the same slanders. It is really very regretful because the country like Armenia, who had kept my country's 20% territories under the occupation for 20 years or 30 years, has no right to talk about these issues. It is not only cynical, but also ridiculous to accuse Azerbaijan for attacking its own land. Azerbaijan has liberated its own territories and used UN Charter 51 paragraph for self-defense. Luckily, Azerbaijan could unilaterally, one-sidedly implemented 4 UN Security resolutions, Security Council resolutions about the occupation and aggression of Armenia. What we have seen now, the same aggression from Armenian delegation continues in the field of the platform for dialogue, in the field of the reputable assembly like our one. I am rejecting this behavior. I call on Armenia to be constructive, to be in line with the spirit of the assembly's dialogue, and to refrain from making such groundless accusations against my country. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Asey-Güliev. Next speaker on my list is Mr. Denis Karas from Belarus. He will be followed by Mr. Juris Puch from Latvia. Mr. Denis Karas, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Уважаемые коллеги, Беларусь неоднократно заявляла об опасности безрассудного поведения руководства и политиков ряда западных стран, которые в последние годы все чаще предпочитают неприкрытое давление и угрозы в качестве инструментов решения своих и международных проблем. Учет интересов других участников процесса практически повсеместно был заменен ими на односторонние ограничительные меры, гибридные воздействия и агрессивную риторику. Прямым следствием стал стремительный рост напряженности в восточноевропейском регионе, а также деградация создававшейся десятилетиями системы международной безопасности, дискредитация и нивелирование авторитета таких важнейших источников мира и безопасности, как ООН и ОБСЕ, обесценивание международных договоров и соглашений, ровно как и отказ от своих прямых обязательств по ним. Республика Беларусь всегда активно и последовательно выступала за мирное урегулирование конфликта на юго-востоке Украины. Напоминаем об особой ответственности США и Евросоюза в нагнетании обстановки. Необходимо перестать провоцировать насилие, накачивать Украину и стран Балтии войсками и оружием, вводить незаконные санкции. Белорусская сторона в своих дальнейших действиях намерена исходить из принципов добросовестного отношения всех сторон к выполнению принятых на себя международных обязательств. Хочу вас заверить, что белорусские войска не принимают участие в российской спецоперации на Донбассе. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you very much, Mr. Denis Karas. Next speaker on my list is Mr. Juris Puch from Latvia. He will be followed by Mr. Ahmed Arslan from Turkey. Mr. Denis Karas, your floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam President, dear colleagues, this is my first Parliamentary Assembly meeting as head of Latvian delegation, and it would have been much more pleasant for me to talk about any other issue. I have pre-prepared remarks for today, as most of us, but I feel that this would be totally inappropriate to talk about any other issue than that's what Europe is nowadays facing. Our Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe was created to hold talks instead of wars. Today we are in the middle of war in Europe. Russia, with the help of Belarus, has invaded Ukraine. And I send my deepest sympathy to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian government, to our colleagues here from Ukraine in our Parliamentary Assembly. Latvian Parliament today passed a declaration of unilateral declaration for all unanimously taken of support to Ukraine. Latvia strongly condemns the attack of Russia towards Ukraine, and we strongly support right of Ukraine for its territorial integrity and the right of Ukrainian people to choose their own destiny. This is the only path the future peace can be achieved if we fully respect the Ukrainian sovereignty. As to regards what will happen next, Latvia will support comprehensive sanctions against aggressors. Latvia has no luxury to wait for something good to happen. We totally understand that we are next in line for Putin's imperial ambition to conquer also us. What regards the comments from Ms. Kusaiko, indeed, Ms. Kusaiko, we are experiencing history repeating. Putin is decisively going to in the footsteps of Adolf Hitler. And how do you know that Mr. Tolstoy is lying? The answer is simple. His lips are moving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yunus. Next speaker is Mr. Ahmet Arslan from Turkey. He will be followed by Ms. Brindis Haraldsdottir. Mr. Ahmet Arslan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Distinguished Chair, distinguished
We can't hear you.
It's very important for me to actually make this negotiations with you even from remotely. I hope that we're going to be able to see each other face to face very shortly. As Turkey, from the beginning of the Ukrainian crisis, we had a robust and very dedicated attitude, and we have emphasized our support for the Ukraine's independence and border integrity, and we have also did not recognize the Crimean illegal violation, and we have denied Russia's recognition decisions for Donetsk and Luhansk republics, and we think that is illegal and illegitimate of Russia sending two troops to this region. And now we're facing a new phase in this crisis. There's an open aggression towards Ukrainian territory, and this is completely unacceptable. And so this military operation that's been initiated by the Russian Federation Armed Forces is unacceptable, and we reject it. So this attack, rather than violating the Minsk agreement, is a big violation of international law, and it constitutes a great threat for our region and for the world. We don't want war in our region. I think these attacks should be ended immediately, and border integrity and sovereignty should be respected, and that's what Turkey believes. And we also believe, again, we are against of changing the borders with armed force, and we are calling for Russia Federation to stop this unlawful and unjust action. And of course, our common history in our institution has showed us the division and conflict have great dangers, and we have to go back to the diplomacy table, and we have to solve this with peace, and we have to utilize all the tools provided by OSCE. We want to go back to the diplomacy efforts, and of course our country will be against any kind of attacks to the UN Charter, to OSCE principles and decisions, and we are actually
Thank you so much. Time is out. Next speaker on my list is Ms. Brindis Haraldsdottir. She will be followed by Ms. Serene Mabouron from France. Ms. Brindis Haraldsdottir from Iceland, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. The Icelandic delegation condemns the extensive attacks by the Russian government on Ukraine. My thoughts are with the Ukrainian people who are under attack. Let us all pray for their safety. We stand with you. This reckless and unprovoked attack of Russia on Ukraine is a flagrant violation of international law. And it is a serious threat to all of us, all the people living in the OSCE area. This unprecedented attack on a sovereign state is also an attack on the security system of the world. I want to urge our Russian members and our Belarusian members that have so far supported Putin's agenda. Stop this war now. Your support started the war. It is yours to stop it. Our fellow assembly member from Russia, Tatiana Kasoka, said Russia did not want to be anyone's enemy. So I speak frankly also. If so, really, stop this war now, and with that, prevent World War III from happening. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Ms. Bryndis Haraldsdottir. Next speaker is Ms. Serene Mabon from France, head of the delegation. She will be followed by Mr. Kyriakos Hariani from Cyprus. Ms. Serene Mabon, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Mesdames, Messieurs, chers collègues, en 2022, nous célébrons de nombreux anniversaires, dont le 30e anniversaire de la Cour de conciliation et d'arbitrage des premiers mécanismes relevant de l'alerte rapide, la prévention des conflits et la gestion des crises, et du Forum pour la coopération en matière de sécurité, le 25e anniversaire de l'adoption du mandat de représentant de l'OSCE pour les médias. Il s'agira également des 20 ans de l'entrée en vigueur du traité Ciel ouvert et des 30 ans pour le traité CFE sur les forces armées conventionnelles. Que d'instances, que d'outils créés et mis à disposition de la résolution pacifique des conflits et de la paix, et acceptés par nous tous, États membres de l'OSCE. Et pourtant, pour avoir multiplié les entraves au fonctionnement normal de l'OSCE veto, notamment pour l'organisation de la réunion sur la dimension humaine, retrait du traité Ciel ouvert, la Fédération de Russie viole depuis quelques jours et une fois encore le droit international et les engagements souscrits en attaquant l'intégrité territoriale et la souveraineté de l'Ukraine. Une liste d'Ukrainiens, simples citoyens, membres de la société civile, à arrêter ou à attaquer sur le sol ukrainien par la Russie aurait été établie. Si cela était avéré, cela signifierait clairement que cette guerre, car il s'agit bien d'une guerre, ne se jouera pas exclusivement entre soldats, mais impliquera également des civils, et qu'il s'agirait de réprimer. Cela n'est pas acceptable. Certaines informations font également part de bombardements dans les zones urbaines ou périurbaines, avec des pertes civiles. Cela n'est pas davantage acceptable. La population ukrainienne n'a pas à subir ou payer le coût humain et économique de cette agression injustifiée. Je termine, Madame la Présidente. Comme vient de l'indiquer le président de la République, Emmanuel Macron, président en exercice de l'Union européenne, nous répondrons sans faiblesse, avec sang-froid, détermination et unité. Aussi, nous exhortons la Fédération de Russie à stopper immédiatement ces attaques sur le territoire ukrainien. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Serene Mabon. Next speaker on my list is Mr. Kyriakos Hariani from Cyprus. He will be followed by Mr. Mark Demesmaeker
Madam President.
from Belgium.
Today,
Mr.
we are
Kyriakos Hariani, the
experiencing
floor is
a
yours.
tragic
Thank you.
situation. What kind of dialogue are we having today? Unfortunately, only appears, and it has a form of generality. Peace has been killed. The principles we support are frozen inside us. Hypocrisy has defeated logic based on our principles. Today, people in the society in the area experience pain, injuries, death, cold, hunger, and fear. At least today, we should stay in favor of humanitarian aid. Minimum. Our countries must ensure the humanitarian aid that the people need in the war zone, now and immediately. We have to have strong voice for the people of SMM and for the people on spot. minimum appeal to avoid strike against people, against hospitals. The people of Spot need immediately hope that the world outside call with strong voice, stop finally this war, stop this war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kyriakos Hadjiani. Next speaker on my list is Mr. Mark Demaker from Belgium. He will be followed by Mr. Bob Zimmer from Canada. Mr. Mark Demaker, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Colleagues, our community of nations is based on the principles of non-aggression, of cooperation, and respect for territorial integrity. The people of Ukraine, only the people of Ukraine, have the right to choose their own path. They have elected their representatives and their government in a free and democratic way. Colleagues, we are all elected representatives. We must all be accountable to our voters. We all have responsibility towards our people, their welfare, their well-being. I address my colleagues of the Russian Duma. I ask them, what will our people win with this war? We all know the answer. We will all lose. No one will win. So I urge you to choose another path, the path of dialogue and mutual respect. Don't get caught up in a blind vision that makes everyone lose. There is no justification whatsoever for military aggression that causes destruction, suffering, death. My country condemns it, we condemn it, the world condemns it. Call your military back and stop this war. My heart and thoughts are with my colleagues and my friends in Ukraine, whose very lives are now in danger. We stand with you. We stand with Ukraine. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you very much, Mr. Demesmaker. Next speaker is Mr. Bob Zimmer, and Mr. Bob Zimmer will be followed by Yevgenia Krabuch from Ukraine. Mr. Bob Zimmer, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings, President and OSCE PA colleagues. Our hearts are with our friends in Ukraine today as they face a frightening and uncertain future. Canadians stand with you. We share our European neighbors' concerns around the Russian invasion of Ukraine and in the strongest of terms condemn the actions of Russia. We in Canada have observed with great concern the increasing interest in the Canadian Arctic and its resources also, and are concerned. Russia, to Mr. Putin, as stated by our former parliamentary colleague, Prime Minister Harper, you are a bully and must be dealt with like all bullies, with resolute unity and force. Again, to our Ukrainian friends, Canadians stand with you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bob Zimmer. And now I will give the floor to our last speaker for today. I just would like to say that there is a lot of more delegates who have requested the floor. I am sorry to say, but there is no possibility to give the floor to any more speakers because there are other meetings that will follow, and it's a difficult situation today as it's an emergency situation, and I hope you have understanding for this. I know that you have prepared statements and want to make interventions, but all delegations who have asked for the floor have had the possibility to have one delegate who received the floor for this debate. Now I will give the floor to Ms. Yevgenia Kravchuk from Ukraine, and Ukraine is the only country who have two speakers. The floor is yours, Ms. Kravchuk. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm really honored to be speaking the last on this meeting. It's actually my first meeting within the OSCE. And I'm sorry I might be a bit emotional because I woke up today at 5 o'clock in the morning because my city, capital of Ukraine, was bombed. My daughter is 8 years old. That's how long the war of Ukraine and Russia has been going. She didn't go to school today, but right now she is safe. But I don't know what to say to parents of little boy in Uman, Cherkasy region, which is in the center of Ukraine, who was killed today. It's not only about bombing of militaries, bombing of airports. It's about killing even kids. We're really thankful for your statements, for your support and words, but we all need from all your countries real support, military, financial, and even humanitarian. Please talk to your governments, talk to your political leaders, be political leaders, because this is the point where Europe cannot, and all world cannot close their eyes. You cannot say that, things has been as usual. It's 21st century and it's a war in center of Europe. We need your support and we need your help, but we will not lose any inch of our soil. All of us will fight. And I want to address the Russian delegation. You wanted to scare us. You wanted us to go away from Kyiv. No, you will not get this. We will stay and we will fight in every city of Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yevgenia Kravchuk. And thank you all delegates for your interventions, for your participations. I say, as I said at the Standing Committee, this is the debate today. It have shown the really importance and the gravity of the situation in the OSCE region from the military attack and aggression against Ukraine. I would also like to say it's when I have listening around, I can say that the majority, except 2 countries, have expressed support for Ukraine. And what we will continue to do today, there is the Permanent Council who have a meeting at 4 o'clock. I will be there and deliver the statement on behalf of OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. There will be also continued this afternoon with the committee meeting, and please attend them because I'm sure there will be very interesting and important debates and also speakers. And I look forward to meet you tomorrow, but once again, as has been stressed several times, the activity of us as parliamentarians is crucial, not only here in this room, but also back home. In our parliament, to deliver our knowledge, what we have learned here today, what we have heard, to our colleagues who don't have the opportunity to take part in an OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, but also in our constituency, and of course, to put pressure of our governments. But I know that in most countries are the governments and the parliamentarians standing side by side in this crucial situation. And I would like to mention that I have just heard as well that it's not only parliamentarians who are worried, it's the civil society and also sports organizations. I just received a message from the ski organization in Sweden who were going for a huge contest in Russia. They have canceled it. They say they will not take part in any contest in Russia as long as the military aggression goes on. So the Ukrainian people, they have support from all over the OSCE region, and I must say from a lot of other countries. Thank you, dear colleagues, for your participations, and let's continue our work for a peaceful solution and respect of Ukraine's integrity. Thank you.